The sender of one of the most disturbing emails in the Epstein files has been revealed. This is the message which caught lots of people's attention when those files were first released by the Justice Department. It's from Jeffrey Epstein to, we're not sure who. Well, at this point, we're not sure who. Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video. So Jeffrey Epstein loves a torture video, which he's been sent by someone, which was redacted. We now know, though, because of the demands of 2 Congress people in the United States, who was the redacted person. I mean, it was this man, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem. He's the chair of DP World, which is one of the world's largest logistic companies owned by the government of Dubai. He's a frequent attendee at the World Economic Forum at Davos. You can see him pictured there. Bin Sulayem also personally owns a property empire with luxury hotels, including in London's Mayfair district, as well as a 5-star resort in Dubai. And he was incredibly close to Jeffrey Epstein. There are over 5,000 mentions of Sulayem in the latest tranche of Epstein files. And between 2007 and 2019, Epstein and Sulayem shared business contacts, as well as sexual photos and intimate personal stories. Bizarrely, Sulayem also used Epstein as a conduit to acquire ancestry tests from 23andMe. This is an email from 2017. Dear Jeffrey, I have ordered 30 ancestry test kits for Sheikh Mohammed. I asked them to ship to your house. It will arrive in 2 days. As soon as it arrives, I will ask Emirates Airlines to collect it from your house. I hope you are okay with this. So this is a very complex sort of system. You've got to get the ancestry test from 23andMe to the house of a sort of high-class pedo billionaire in Manhattan, and then Emirates Airlines is going to pick it up just so these 30 ancestry tests can go to... I mean, by the way, Sheikh Mohammed is the ruler of Dubai, so this was some high-powered ancestry tests. Apparently, 23andMe cancelled the order because they're not allowed to ship the order outside of America. So, even however powerful you are, there are some limits. What exactly these guys were planning to use the tests for is unclear, but Sulayem seems to have an interest in racial purity. This is an exchange from 2013. 2 bits of interest here, because from Jeffrey Epstein in 2013 says, all I know for sure is that you are one of my most trusted friends in every sense of the word. You have never let me down, not once, not half of once, and I greatly appreciate the time we spent together. So just sort of proof there of how close these 2 men were. But then here's the response I want to draw your attention to from Sultan bin Sulayem. Thank you, my friend. I am off to sample a fresh 100% female Russian at my yacht. This dehumanizing way of talking about women was a frequent occurrence in exchanges between these 2. So this is to Jeffrey Epstein from bin Sulayem. By the way, the Ukrainian and the Moldovan arrived. Big disappointment. The Moldovan is not as attractive as the picture, while the Ukrainian is very beautiful. In an email from a leak seen by Bloomberg, but not included in the Justice Department release, Sulayem, discussing his efforts to meet a supermodel, says, quote, after several attempts for several months, we managed to meet in NY. There is a misunderstanding. She wanted some business, while I only wanted some pussiness. Epstein replies, praise Allah, there are still people like you. Also in 2007, at an early stage in the relationship, Epstein emailed Sulayem to say, I hope you had fun. I am glad to have you as a friend. You are the only person I have met who is as crazy as me. Now, if Jeffrey Epstein is saying you're the only person who is as crazy as me, we know what he counts as crazy. We know how he identifies what kind of actions he takes. That's not a good thing to hear. Of course, there is no suggestion that Sulayem has broken the law. There's no evidence in these files that he's done anything illegal. However, he has now lost his job as head of DP World. Helena, bin Sulayem is just the latest powerful business person to lose his job and have their reputation damaged in these files. Has he got his comeuppance?
I mean, somewhat of a comeuppance at the very least, right? He'll still have all his untold wealth to his name, but he won't have the powerful position that he held in that particular industry, although given what it is like for powerful people who live in places like Dubai, there's always somewhere else you can go to be able to use your wealth for your own ends. But having your reputation damaged, what is internationally now the Epstein files, despite being solely at the discretion of the American DOJ, is now an international scandal, as we've seen the repercussions over here. And that will mean both business and personal repercussions because of that damaged reputation for this guy, and also potentially DP World in particular. I remember when Lou Haig said that DP World were a rogue employer. She's getting a bit of her infinite. What's the word I'm looking for? Vindication. Yeah, she's in her vindication era. Lou Haig really is.
And the context there, by the way, is that DP World owned P&O Ferries.
That's
and P&O Ferries had done some fire and
rehire
law, or broken some employment law.
Either way. He will still have reputational damage, but he'll still be very rich. What is interesting, however, is that why was this name picked to be redacted in the first place? Because it's only after Massey and Khanna, the two Congress people that we talked about earlier, who were the instrumental in the Epstein Files Transparency Act, going to the DOJ and viewing these files that had previously been redacted and seeing them unredacted themselves, that we only know about this person. Them going specifically to the DOJ and saying, why have you redacted this person? Like the email where they say, thank you for the torture video, it's just the sender that had been redacted, and that was a choice that's been made to redact those documents. Seems pretty likely to me, in my personal opinion, that you'd have to have some good friends to be able to think that your name was worth redacting, given that the actual letter of the law in the Epstein Files Transparency Act is redactions are only supposed to be there to protect victims and not perpetrators, or people who are implicated in terms of the files. He's not been charged or been accused of perpetrating anything. He's only been sending emails that allude to have been doing some gross things, potentially. But we don't know that there's any actual proof that he did do those things. But there is a lot of links between the current Trump administration and some very powerful people in the United Arab Emirates. You look at their plan with regards to the kind of power struggle between Saudi Arabia and the UAE. We've seen lots of connections in terms of powerful people in Western capitalism and what's happening with powerful people in the United Arab Emirates. Interesting that out of the names that would previously been redacted, first of all, they was redacted in the first place, and second of all, that they managed to find these people once they managed to get them unredacted, having looked at the files, those two Congress people.
I mean, I suppose we've been talking a lot about the Epstein files, and I often like to suggest also the less sinister explanation. I mean, the redactions seem very random and arbitrary, and there were 3 million files, and it does seem like, because they clearly didn't redact his name in lots of them because he comes up 5,000 times. But in some of the emails they're redacted. Often you get sort of like with the Mandelson ones, which we've been looking at, sort of it's redacted who sent the email, but then in the reply you can see who sent the. So there is a sort of random nature to the redactions as well, I think, because there's so many files. But I definitely think it's perfectly plausible that this is a very powerful man who might have lobbied to be redacted on the most damaging ones. I mean, there is a geopolitical angle to this relationship. Obviously, the rape, porn, whatever, disturbing. Very interesting angle, though, I think, in terms of Epstein's power, what this tells us about elite networks. In an article from 2021, very interesting in this context, it's from Rolling Stone magazine. It includes this passage. Once he got out of jail, in the last 10 years of his life, Epstein bragged to various people, including journalists, that he was advising a whole assortment of foreign leaders who included Vladimir Putin, Mohammed bin Zayed, Mohammed bin Salman, various African dictators, Israel, the British, and of course the Americans. He also told several of the same people that he was making a fortune out of arms, drugs, and diamonds. He told one person, journalist Edward J. Epstein, that he knew the owner of the deep water port of Djibouti on the Horn of Africa, a smuggler's paradise, so well that he was basically in charge of it. Now, at the time of this being written in 2021, the journalist makes clear that this might have been just bragging, it might not have been completely true, but it is proven beyond doubt in these files that he was incredibly close to the owner of the deep water port in Djibouti, because that was Sulayem, right? So that's who he's speaking about here, and it is absolutely borne out in these emails that they were incredibly, incredibly close. And this speaks to partly how he could have made his money. So, of course, in lots of the drop site reporting, they're talking about how he made money by smuggling, by sort of being a key node when it comes to arms trade, and also when it comes to diamonds. So diamonds often go through Dubai, a key location when it comes to the trade of illicit diamond smuggling. Epstein claimed to have had or made millions via that source. And when US authorities raided Epstein's New York mansion in 2019, they discovered 48 loose diamond stones and a large diamond ring in a locked safe. So you can see how these kind of connections to key nodes, someone who owns one of the largest shipping firms, one of the largest logistic firms in a country where you can do illicit trade in diamonds, very, very useful if you want to make dodgy money and you want to make it in larger amounts. According to Dropsite News, the relationship between Epstein and Salayem was also key in nurturing Israeli-Emirati ties before the signing of the Abraham Accords. Epstein died before the Abraham Accords were signed, but he was sort of very close in the relationship between the two countries before that. And that was largely through brokering a relationship between Ehud Barak, the former Israeli Prime Minister, and Salayem. Now, that was also via getting the UAE to invest in Israeli logistics and infrastructure. Now, interestingly, they say the relationship between Salayem and Epstein began after DP World was blocked from buying 6 major US ports in 2006. Now, after that humiliation, the UAE vowed never to be caught flat-footed in the US again, and so began courting relationships with American elites. And Jeffrey Epstein was just one way in. So I found this really interesting. Sort of lots of the countries that seem to keep appearing in the Epstein files. There's Russia, there's Israel, there's the UAE. And you see the use of someone like Jeffrey Epstein to elites, because these two get introduced because the UAE wants to improve its networking abilities with the United States. They've got blocked from buying some ports in 2008, obviously sort of during the war on terror. That was when they would sort of call Al Jazeera a terrorist network or whatever. And he's saying, I want to know some important people, gets very close with Epstein. They bond over sex and prostitutes and, I don't want to say potentially the trafficking of women, because Salayem, there's no evidence he committed a crime. Lots of evidence that Epstein did. But they bond over this sort of sordid pastimes they have. But at the same time, this becomes a way that they can make loads of money, Epstein via smuggling potentially, and also form high-level diplomatic ties. And I just think Salayem is such an interesting figure who I hadn't heard of personally, who you can see clearly plays such a strategic role as a node in international elites, like very close to the rulers of UAE, controlling one of the world's largest logistics companies.
I mean, that's the thing. I think the one thing that people could try and look at this through the lens of is that somehow the links between these people are purely on the grounds of the relationships that they have through what Epstein is very famously known for the sex trafficking ring being them knowing him to have access to the ring itself, but him as an international power broker for what is capital, for what is wealth and power. That's the thing that links people within the Epstein files. I was mentioning it on the show before. People like to look at this through that specific lens, but the one thing that's shared throughout all of these people is wealth and power and access to power. And as you say, if this is a conduit through which that they're using to essentially undermine what people always talked about for so long has been international free market of capital, where everything is being done through mutually beneficial business deals based upon market incentives, when in fact they're going through in the background someone like Jeffrey Epstein to be able to ensure that they have access without there being a proper market, without there being a tendering process, without it being done purely through how the market would distribute things in the most efficient manner possible. And that means that it's not just going to be a certain group of people that gets implicated in these files. It's going to be people of any nationality, of any religion, of any background, from any country, who have access to wealth and power, who have access to capital, and shows that all of this myth-making about the invisible hand of the free market breaks down when you actually look at the power brokers behind the scenes, when you actually look at the fact that we do have an oligarchy. We do have an oligarchic society, because it's not about people making it from nowhere. It's not about the ways in which that you can undermine the system should you just work hard enough and play hard enough. No, all you actually need is access to power, access to capital, access to the network of people, and you can maintain that power pretty much indefinitely until states take it upon themselves to expose these people for what they are.